Maria Callas's career was equal parts iconic and controversial, but it had nothing on her absolutely explosive life behind the scenes. This first-class diva, through legendary temper tantrums, started feuds and broke up one of the most iconic couples in American history in the most scandalous way imaginable. You see, Maria Callas was the other woman between Aristotle Onassis and Jackie O. Jackie found out in the worst way imaginable, and her reaction was utterly deranged. But I'll dive into this in more detail later. Born in December 1923 to Greek immigrants George and Litsa in New York, they hoped to make a better life for themselves. Sadly, they were doomed from the start. George was laid back and unintellectual, while Litsa was obsessed with becoming an influential socialite. By the time they were living in America, the family was already coming apart at the seams. But when Maria came into the world, things got 10 times worse. When Litsa was pregnant with Maria, she had just lost a young son, Vasilis Tomenogitis. Desperately hoping for another boy to fill the void, she was crushed at the thought of having a girl. No one could get her to even look at Maria for the first 4 days of her life. Yet soon enough, this mistreatment took a much more alarming turn. For a while, Litsa continued to ignore Maria, preferring her older, prettier sister Jackie. But when Maria turned 3, the family began to notice that their humble little girl had one big voice. So big, in fact, that Litsa began to see dollar signs and society columns whenever she looked at her daughter. Suddenly, she went from neglect to smothering, and the result was a horror Maria wouldn't soon forget. For the formative years of her life, Maria's mother virtually forced the girl to sing for her supper, becoming a stage mom extraordinaire. As Maria later recalled, "During all the years I should have been playing and growing up, I was singing or making money." And honestly, there was an even darker angle to all this. Litsa somehow managed to still favor the elder Jackie, especially as the girl slimmed out into a beautiful woman, and Maria became, in her words, an ugly duckling, fat and clumsy and unpopular. Only as it turned out, Maria was about to face a much more demanding world outside her family unit. In the late 1930s, Maria's parents had completely dissolved their dysfunctional marriage, and the women of the family moved back to Greece. Here, Maria's vocal talents only became more obvious, and she eventually won a spot training under Alvera de Hidalgo. The legendary soprano taught the arcane art of bel canto, an 18th-century way of singing that emphasizes emotional connection with the music. But even as de Hidalgo called Callas a phenomenon, the young girl began developing disturbing, ruinous habits. From a young age, Callas learned from her mother that her worth was tied to working hard, singing challenging arias as a teenager, and spending 10 hours a day at the conservatory in Athens, a high cost for her success. In February 1941, Callas debuted as a professional opera singer in a minor role, making a strong impression on her co-stars, though not all positive. Some singers were intimidated by her talent and tried to sabotage her by making remarks and pointing fingers while she performed. Callas' response was simple. She was just too good, earning the title The God-Given by 1942. However, her voice was both her gift and her curse. The Callas debate revolved around whether her voice was beautiful or disturbing, with some finding it rough and ugly. Even Callas herself agreed at times, despising listening to her own voice. Callas could fight fiercely for her art. Once, after hearing a man say she wouldn't succeed due to her weight, she attacked him, bloodying his nose, then still performed that night, receiving rave reviews despite her swollen eye. In the mid-1940s, her life became more dramatic. In Verona, she met Giovanni Battista Meneghini, who was 26 years older but pursued her passionately. They married in 1949, and he began managing her career. That same year, she performed 2 demanding roles back-to-back, stunning critics and elevating her status to an icon. In the early 1950s, a rivalry with Renata Tebaldi emerged, leading to a legendary feud. Tensions exploded in 1951 when Tebaldi performed encores against their agreement, angering Callas. Callas attended Tebaldi's performances to loudly cheer her on, causing Tebaldi to falter and reduce her appearances. The feud only intensified, showcasing Callas' competitive spirit. At the peak of their rivalry, Tebaldi claimed, "I have one thing that Callas doesn't have, a heart." Callas famously compared Tebaldi to Coca-Cola, and herself to champagne. Though Callas later claimed she was misquoted, the comment became legendary. Despite claims that the rivalry was exaggerated, it was well known not to mention one diva to the other. When Tebaldi asked for a La Gioconda recording, Robinson chose one not by Callas. Tebaldi, however, listened to Callas' version and asked why she hadn't been told it was the best. During her feuds, audiences often chose sides. Rival supporters hissed at Callas, fueling her performances. She would sing her best arias directly at her critics, and bow only to those who supported her. As she said, "If I hear them stirring and hissing, I know I'm on top. If I hear nothing, I know I'm slipping." In 1955, a photo captured Callas' dark side. After a performance of Madama Butterfly, she was handed a lawsuit by a fake agent, and her vicious response was caught on film. This incident cemented her tigress reputation, but beneath it all, she was more fragile than people realized. From a chubby child and adolescent, Callas had grown into a heavy woman and had always carried weight well into her early career. At 5'8", she hovered just under 200 pounds, and while having extra weight often helped sopranos produce fuller sounds with their bodies, this apparently wasn't good enough for the men in Callas' life. One day, one of them let her know it in a brutal way. While recording the opera Lucia in Florence, Callas was out on a lunch break with the operatic baritone Tito Gabbi and her old mentor Talio Serafin. Unable to mind his own business or his own food, Serafin watched Callas eat, and then informed her she was stuffing her face too much and letting herself go. When Callas protested that she wasn't really all that heavy, her friend made an incredibly insulting suggestion. Instead of letting one of the most jaw-dropping divas do what she darned well pleased, Serafin cattily suggested that they put Callas' protest to the test and have her step on the weighing machine just outside of the restaurant's side note. That should be illegal. Callas agreed, and when she saw the number on the scale, she found the answer somewhat dismaying, and she became rather silent. After that, something broke. Soon after this friendly altercation, Callas decided she needed to slim down. She claimed that because of her weight, I was tiring myself on stage. Then again, she had more heartbreaking reasons. She also said she was tired of playing a game, for instance playing this beautiful young woman. You know, as if she wasn't beautiful already, at a higher weight. Thanks again, Tolio. When Callas was through with her mission, the results were alarming. Whatever Maria Callas put her mind to was sure to happen, and she lost almost 80 pounds in a year, turning into a slender and graceful figure who one conductor called possibly the most beautiful lady on the stage. But there was an ugly facet to her transformation. Besides the obvious pressures to be thin and thus beautiful, Callas' weight loss was so intense and so quick. Some claimed she'd swallowed a tapeworm, though Callas herself swore it was only a diet of salads and chicken. And that wasn't all. The burdens of the opera world were beginning to weigh on Callas, and a rash of new scandals pushed her to the brink. In 1958, Callas tried to bow out of a show at Rome's Opera House, pleading sickness and asking for an understudy. The management, who were expecting Italy's president that night, simply told her no one can double Callas and insisted that the show must go on. Callas pushed through, but it ended in utter disaster. Although Callas went on in front of the president as scheduled, the sick woman had to throw in the towel after the first act, launching the theater into pandemonium. The media accused the diva of storming out on the head of state, and newsreels soon began mocking her by saying, "If you want to hear Callas, don't get all dressed up. Just go to a rehearsal. She usually stays to the end of those." And just when Callas thought she was going to catch a break, it went from bad to worse. 1958 was a very bad year for Maria Callas. Later in the year, she was in negotiations with the Met for their next season when she hit a big bump in the road. Seemingly out of nowhere, Met General Manager Rudolph Bing unceremoniously fired her and terminated her contract right before she was due to open another opera, Medea in Dallas. As usual, the press got word of it and printed "Bing fires Callas" in headlines for all to see. The thing is, Callas knew just what to do. You don't get called a diva for nothing, and Callas more than earned the moniker. That night at Medea, Callas showed up dressed to the nines, or, as her friend put it, she came to the theater looking like an empress. She wore an ermine thing that draped to the floor, and she had every piece of jewelry she ever owned. But lest you forget, Callas wasn't just looks. She also spoke to the audience beforehand, telling them, "You all know what's happened. Tonight for me is a very difficult night, and I will need the help of every one of you." With the crowd firmly on her side, Callas then gave a performance of Medea that was historical. If only the good times lasted. Around the same time that Callas lost the weight of roughly half a person, she also lost something much more precious, control of her voice. Though no one can know for sure what caused this, many blame her weight loss for changing her body and not providing her with enough breath support. Whatever the truth, her voice steadily began to lose its fullness, and as one of Callas' fellow sopranos wrote, "I don't think that anyone who heard Callas after 1955 really heard the Callas voice. It was as painful and harrowing a loss as the diva could have ever received. And maybe this is why she began to destroy her life from the inside." In 1957, Callas was attending a glamorous party when she met the Greek shipping tycoon Aristotle Onassis. Although she was still married to Giovanni Battista Meneghini, Callas couldn't resist the brash, silver-tongued Onassis, and the pair soon began a steamy affair. Correction, a steamy, very public affair. They didn't bother to hide it from the world, and Callas certainly didn't show her husband any mercy. After carrying on with Onassis in a variety of yachts and European destinations for nearly 2 whole years, Callas called her marriage quits completely and left her husband Meneghini, simultaneously ending his management of her career. At 34 years old, Callas was experiencing her midlife crisis almost a decade early, and she wasn't stopping the spiral now. After her controversies and vocal difficulties, Callas all but stopped performing once she fell into Aristotle Onassis's bed. When her friend, director Franco Zeffirelli, asked Callas why she seemed to be drifting away from her destiny at the opera, she told him, "I have been trying to fulfill my life as a woman." Yep, Callas gave up nearly everything to be with Aristotle, which makes it all the more heartbreaking that their relationship was a bona fide nightmare. Callas and Onassis were inseparable for over a decade, but their love was full of tragedies, half secret from the world. Callas' ex-husband claimed she was unable to bear children, but there is evidence she got pregnant with Onassis and either aborted the baby or gave birth to a son who passed hours later. In 1963, Onassis went on a yacht trip without Callas, inviting Jackie Kennedy instead. Ostensibly, it was to help Jackie cope with her son's death, but Onassis had other intentions. He waited for Jackie even after JFK's assassination, and in 1968, he betrayed Callas by proposing to Jackie. Many believe Onassis didn't truly love Jackie, but wanted to possess the most famous woman in the world. Callas still had his heart, and he returned to her days after marrying Jackie, begging to rekindle their affair. At first, Callas refused, but Onassis manipulated her, threatening to crash his car if she didn't take him back, leading to their affair reigniting. The pair met monthly, a regular absence Jackie noticed. The paparazzi caught Onassis and Callas together at Maxim's in Paris, prompting Jackie to have a public dinner there with Onassis days later. This power struggle continued for years. Eventually, Onassis regretted marrying Jackie and initiated divorce proceedings, feeling he had betrayed Maria. Yet, this story doesn't have a happy ending. We'll never know if Onassis intended to marry Callas, but soon after starting the divorce paperwork, he fell gravely ill. Suffering from myasthenia gravis, he was rushed to the hospital in 1975 for the last time. Jackie's reaction was cold, and Maria's was bold. With Onassis on his deathbed, Jackie refused to visit him, opting for a holiday in Aspen. She used her legal power to block Maria from seeing him, but Callas wouldn't be stopped. Using her connections, she sneaked into Onassis's room through a service elevator, spending an hour with him as he lay in a coma. Everyone knew Callas was Onassis's true love. Even his driver admitted she was his true wife. Yet, when Onassis died days later, Callas was devastated. Jackie received a $26 million settlement, while Callas got nothing. Without Onassis, Callas became a shell of her former self. His presence had coincided with the end of her opera career and the fading of her voice. Living in Paris, she rarely left her apartment and spent her days listening to old recordings. Callas still lived a diva lifestyle, enjoying facials, creams, and fashion. She owned nearly 200 dresses and famously discarded gloves when they got dirty. Callas couldn't live without Onassis, and she died of a heart attack on September 16, 1977, just 2 years after his death. Her end was as sudden and tragic as an opera, fitting for one of opera's most legendary divas. We may never fully understand their relationship, but Callas believed they were drawn together as the most famous Greeks alive. Maria Callas had an untold effect on her peers, both for her immense flaws and her incredible talents. She was, after all, a prototype of the difficult diva. Yet it was Rudolph, being the Met manager, who fired her, who once said that her temperamental reputation was inextricable from her genius. As he put it, it was, because she was so much more intelligent, other artists you could get around. But Callas you could not get around. She knew exactly what she wanted, and why she wanted it. Indeed, in many ways, Maria Callas was a stereotypical, tormented genius, at least in how we choose to remember her. When one of her friends said to her, "It must be very enviable to be Maria Callas," the singer responded, "No, it's a very terrible thing to be Maria Callas, because it's a question of trying to understand something you can never really understand." Time certainly didn't heal Jackie O's and Maria Callas' wounds. In 1974, Callas sat down with the legendary Barbara Walters, and she wasn't about to let the opportunity slip by to cause a little drama. When Walters asked about Callas' relationship with Jackie, the diva had the perfect reply. She answered with a, "Chilly, I don't know her. I've never met her." Then changed the subject. "Sorry, Maria." Maria did it first. If you enjoyed this video, we would highly appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. You're also invited to check out the companion article in the description. Last but not least, if you would like to see more videos on historical figures, please subscribe to the channel.